Today we'll be solving October November 23 paper 2 15-mark question. This is one of the moderate to difficult ones. So as we start, we'll follow the 3 steps. As always, we'll first plan, then we'll visualize, and then in the third part we'll write the code, not otherwise, and we'll highlight all the important data given in the question. All right, wood flooring company stores the names of up to 100 customers in 1D array called customers. Okay, so there has to be up to 100. That means not, all 100 would be used at given point in time. It could be 50, it could be 10, it could be 30. A 2D array called quotations stores details of each customer's quotation. So there would be length. Okay, so this is from one decimal place. Okay, so instantly this should give you the idea that you have to use the round function here. So it is always nice if you can annotate it like this so you don't forget later on. All right, then in the next part we have the width of the room, that is again set to one decimal place, and then we have the area of the wood required, that is rounded up to the next whole number. Okay, in order to do that you need to use the round function with num, and you need to round it off to 0. This rounds it up to the next whole number. So if the value is 5.5, this would be rounded off to 6. If it is 5.1, it rounded off to 5. Okay, so but the question says that it should always be rounded up to the next whole number, so we should always add 0.5 into it. The reason is, let's say if your number is 3.1, so if you round it off to the nearest whole number, then it would become 3. So this is a kind of a tricky part in the question. It says next whole number. So that means we need to add 0.5 in all the values by default, so they can be rounded off to the next whole number. So this is also given in your syllabus or the pseudocode guide. All of these functions are given that you can use. Then the next part says that you have the whole number here. Okay, so this should be integer. We should remember that. And then the price should be set to 2 decimal place. Again, this should be a real number. All right, this is very simple so far. The floor measurements are taken in meters. All floors are rectangles. We'll be using this to calculate the area, and the measurements must be between 1.5 and 10. So here we must know by default that we'll use some sort of validation, which means a while loop or a repeat until loop. All right, then the index of any customer's data is same in the both arrays. For example, a customer named in index 4 of the customer is the same as in the index 4 of the quotation. So again, this is the most important part of mapping data of one array to another. And then we have another part of the question that talks about the wood choices. So we have wood types, we have the prices. The data is stored in two 1D arrays named wood type and price. So this part would go under the wood type array and this part would go under the price array. The index of the wood and the type share the same index number. Again, if you're looking at index 2 of the wood type, it would give you the price of pine. If you're looking at the index number of laminate, it will give you the price of laminate as well. Okay, so now what is the question asking from us? We have to input the customer's name, the length, and the width. And we must keep that in mind that all of the measurements are between 1.5 till 10. Then check the measurements are valid. So as I talked about, we'll be using some sort of validation here. Then output an error message and required the measurements to be re-entered until it is valid. So we need to output an error message and we need to ask to be re-entered, for the values to be re-entered. All right, okay. Then it says calculate the area of the room by multiplying together the length. So this is pretty straightforward. Input the choice of the wood and then find its price per square meter. That means you will ask the user to input the choice of the wood, so they can either input 1, 2, or 3. You could do it using laminate, pine, or oak as well, but it's always much simpler to do it using integers because string get complicated, especially the lowercase, uppercase, and all of that stuff. So you can just ask 1, 2, 3. If it is 2, that means the price would be 39.99. If the index is 1, it would mean the price is 29.99. Then you need to store all the data in the relevant array. So there is only one array that will be storing all of this, which is the quotations array. And then we need to output the customer's quotation, including the name, the choice of the word, the calculated price, and then we need to continue to accept the next customer. So if there are more customers, again as the question said, up to 100. So let's say if there are more customers, you will give the user a choice to either stop or they can just keep on adding. You will need to initialize. Okay, this is the first question we have done so far where we actually need to initialize the array that is clearly written in the question, and everything must be done with suitable method. Okay, now we look at the first part, that is of the planning part. So there are two arrays that we need to look at, quotations and customers. So customers saves the name of the customers. Again, I have it all in front of me. So these are dummy values. You must always visualize and plan the program like this, create dummy values, so it helps you understand the problem in a much better way. So here I have a customer's array, 1D array, and I am visualizing it vertically. It could be done horizontally as well, but it just makes more sense and it's in line with the 2D array quotation. So I have some 100 values here. It's not necessary that all 100 are being used. Then the question says there would be a quotations 2D array which will save 5 values: length, width, area, choice, and price. So we will have 5 columns here, very obvious and self-explanatory. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And first would be length in the order that is given in question. Second would be width. Third, area. Fourth would be the choice of the wood, and fifth would be the price of the wood. Okay, now where do we get the choice and where do we get the price? That was given in the second part of the question, where we have two further arrays called wood type and price. So wood type would be another 1D array with 3 indices, and price would be another 1D array with 3 indices. So whatever user inputs in the choice, that would be the wood type. So wood type, if the user inputs 2, that means it's mine. That means the price should be 39.99. The user inputs 3, in 3 is oak, price would be 54.99. So we just have to map all of this information together. Alright, so we are looking at 1, 2, 3, and 4 arrays. It might get a little confusing, so we'll be very careful while we are storing and updating the arrays. So let's start doing the question. First of all, we'll be going through the array one by one. Also, in this case, a nested loop is not needed because we are giving the column numbers. Whenever you know the data that you have to save in the columns of a 2D array, you can just use a single for loop, and then you can refer to the columns by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by their explicit values. The only reason we use a nested loop to iterate through 2D arrays when we do not know what to store, where to store, and we have to iterate through all of them one by one, like literally one value. Column 1 for row 4, and then second, then third, then fourth, then fifth. Instead, we know the values that we have to save, we can save them directly. Okay, first of all, we'll declare and initialize these arrays that we have to use: wood type and price. So let's get done with the easy stuff first. Declare wood type. You have to be very sure about the spellings and case sensitivity. This should be an array with 3 indices of type string. All the code that I am writing here is directly being borrowed from the pseudocode guide that is part of your syllabus as well. It's given in the description link as well. You can check it out. So declare wood type as array of type string. Then we have declare, we have price, that is also an array of type. This should be real because all the values are decimal values here. Okay, then we have to initialize them. So in the wood type, we'll have 3 values: laminate, pine, and oak. So I'll just write wood type. Index 1 would be laminate, and then I'll just copy paste. This should be pine, and this should be oak, I believe, 2 and 3. And then for the price, index 1, I need to save 2 more values, 3 more values. So the prices are 29, 39, 54, 29, 39, and 54. So this is the part where we initialize the arrays. Initializing wood and price arrays. All right, easy enough. Then the question says, so now we have to plan the question properly. Okay, so before we actually jump into the question, we must have some mechanism where we are supposed to exit to the from the program or either go to the next customer. So we should have some customer counter, and we'll have a loop, and until and unless either user decides to exit the program or until the limit of 100 is reached, we will keep on repeating. So in this case, I'm going to use a repeat until. You can use a while loop. It's totally up to you. So let's have a variable called at customer count, and we set it to 1 initially, or you can set it to 0. Then or we can start from keep it 0. So we are using indices from 1. So we'll also use this as an index. So let's start from 1. Okay, otherwise it will be a bit confusing. Or you can also start these indices from 0 if you want to do that. This is also allowed in the syllabus. Totally up to you. But for the sake of simplicity, I am just starting them from 1. Okay, so repeat until. So this should be done until the customer count becomes greater than 100, and then or user decides to exit the program, or let's say we have status that would be set equal to, let's say, exit. It's totally up to you however you want to do it. You can do it using a boolean, you can do it using a string, whatever suits you. I'm using a string here. Okay, so the status would be inputted by the user at the very end once we have finished inputting values for the array. So we'll leave it as for now. Again, this is the part that you have to plan properly. In the exam, you cannot afford to rewrite and erase the code over and over again. So planning is again extremely important before attempting this question. All right, so now what do we do? first of all, we have to input the customer's name, room length, and room width. That is the first thing that we have to do. And we have to make sure that all of them are between these values. So output, enter name, output, just keep it lowercase, enter room length, and then output, enter room width. So input, name, length, and width. You can use whatever variable names that you like. All right, so now we have to validate them. Okay, so we input them once and now we need to validate them. If you do not input them once, or you do not set some initial values like set the name empty, set the room to some value, so it will not work in case of a while loop, because while loop will give you an undefined value error. So let's say if you say while length is less than 1.5, the question would be what is length and where is it defined. So it's not defined, so you need to take it input at least once. And let's say if the value is correct, so the while loop will not repeat. So when you say while length is less than 1.5 or length is greater than 10.0, all right, 1.5 and 10.0 inclusive, so we should be writing must be between. Okay, this is fine. So if any value is greater than 10, so that should not be allowed. So while the length is acting this way, or width is again less than 1.5 or width is greater than 10.0. So if that is the case, so you need to repeat the values and ask the user to input these values again. So output. Now the question said that you need to output the error message as well. So output length and width must be between 1.5 to 10.0 inclusive. So then you can say re-enter name, length, and width. Also, you can skip the name, input the customer's name. Yeah, we don't need to ask the user to re-enter the name. Just length and width is fine. Re-entered length and width, and then we ask the user to input it again, input length and width, and then we end by. So far what we've done is we just ask the user to input a value. If the user inputs length of, let's say, 33, the loop will repeat. It will say re-enter length and width until you get both the values within the same range of 1.5 to 10 inclusive. And here we should add a comment validating length and width to be in range. Okay, in the next part, now we need to start saving the data into the array. So calculate the area of the room by multiplying together the length of the room, input the choice of the wood, store all the data in the relevant array. So first calculate the area. It was told to us that these are all rectangles, as you can see from here. So we need to use simple area of rectangle, that is length time width. So calculating area of room, that would be length. Okay, now one more thing, in fact very important thing to remember, is all of these roundings that we have to do. So the length should be in one decimal place, width should be in one decimal place, and then area should be rounded to next whole number as we wrote here. So we can round it here, or the other option was you could have rounded off round them at the first point as well. So we'll round the value to LT comma one decimal place. Then width would also be rounded to one decimal place. I'm just saving them in the same variable. You can use new variables, totally up to you. And now we need to find the area. So the area has to be rounded up to the next whole number. Okay, so in order to calculate the area, it should be length times width, and then we need to round the area by adding 0.5 and to the nearest whole number. Why am I adding 0.5? As I explained before, the question clearly says next whole number. So if the value is only 5.1, then the rounding off would make it 5 when it should make it 6. So that's why I'm adding 0.5 individually to all the values to make sure that they round off to the next whole number. So rounding to next whole number. So this is the comment that we should add. So this is the part, we are done with it. Okay, then in the next part they're saying store all the data in the relevant array. We'll get to that in a bit. Now we also need to input the choice of the wood and find its price per square meter. So as we discussed before, we'll ask the user to input an integer value 1, 2 or 3, and we must always make sure that it's validated properly, because user could enter 5 or 10 or minus 30, which is clearly wrong. So validating choice of wood. So repeat until. Okay, so in that we will ask the user to output enter one for laminate, enter 2 for pine, 3 for oak. I'll just get rid of this. Okay, and then you input the choice. You could have also printed this in the same line. I'm just doing it separately, so it's easy to read that way. Okay, so laminate, pine and oak. So the user will input a choice until and unless the user choices are not between 1 and 3, you will keep on repeating this whole process of validation. So until choice is greater than equal to 1, and so until, or you can say until choice is greater than 0 and choice is less than 4, like this. Or you could use the greater than equal to as well. Okay, so until and unless user inputs the right choice, we will keep on repeating. Okay, once we have the index ready now, so we can use that index given to us from 1, 2, or 3 to get the wood type. So 2 would be equal to pine, and we also get the price from the price because it saves the direct value of that given wood type. So here we can get price of wood type. So we can say price is equal to, or we can use it directly. We don't need to save it in another variable. We can just say calculating total price. So how do we calculate the total price? And it says you are told and find its price per square meter. So we have the area and we just need to multiply the price with that, right? So in our case, the price should be something like this. Price should be equal to the area times the wood price. Okay, so we'll say total price is equal to area. So area we had already calculated above for the room, and then we now know the wood type. Wood type was given to us in form of 1, 2, 3. So it could be laminate, pine, oak, 29, 39, 40, 54. So let's say the user chose pine, so this should be 39.99. So this we need to multiply it by the index that was provided to us in choice, and then this is the price array. So I will write price index choice. Okay, so now what does this mean? So if the user had inputted one laminate, so if we replace one here, so we'll go to index one of the price and it will get us 29.99, which is indeed the price of laminate. If the user had inputted three, so this would have gotten us the price of oak 54.99. So that is what we're doing here. So we get the total price. I'll get rid of this comment, and we are done with everything till this point. So we are done with all the way till calculating the total price of the wood needed. Now we need to store all the data in the relevant array, and then we need to output the customer's quotation to include the name, choice, and the calculated price. Okay, so now we need to save all the details. Saving details in quotations. Okay, so how do we save the details now? So you can recall from the question that we need to save 5 values in this array, right? So we'll be doing that. Length, width, area, choice, we have all of them calculated. We can just put them one by one. So quotations, customer count, comma, 1 goes the name. Okay, what does this mean? So as you remember before, customer count is acting as the index or the row number, which is tracking how many users we have in the quotations array at any given point. So this is the customer count right now. So customer count, it's set to 1. So you need to store it either length in the first column, then second width, area, choice, and price. And then we'll increment the customer count by 1. So it becomes 2. And then we repeat the same procedure for all the columns. Then we go to 3, and we keep on doing the same thing over and over again until the customer count either becomes equal to 100, or the user tells that they do not want to add any further quotations into the system. So in order to do that, we have this index as well, or you can just call it customer index as well to not get confused, or customer count is also fine. So customer count column 1, so it's 1 1, so we are saving this value in the length. This shouldn't be name, this should be length. Then quotations, customer count index 2, that is column 2. Here we save the width that we had in width. Then we have customer count column 3. Here we have the area, so we save the area here. Then 4, in index 4 we have the choice, so we save that in the choice variable. And then lastly we have the column 5, and in column 5 we save the price, and the price was saved in this total price for each of the orders. Okay, and this is it. So with this we increment the customer count by 1. That means we will be going to the next customer now. So the first one is done. Now we go to the second one. Okay, and so just incrementing customer count, and at the end the question says that you need to output the customer's quotation to include the name, the choice, and the calculated price of the wood required. So in order to do that, we just simply need to output all of the data. So outputting quotations data, and we'll say output name of customer, that is saved in the customers array. So this customers array that we have 1D array customers, and again we'll be looking at customer count index. again. So it was initially 1, so this will output the first customer's name, and every time increment it will go to 2, 3, 4, 5, then output choice of wood. So choice of wood is saved in the wood type. So wood type index choice. Then we have the price of wood, which is saved in the index of the wood type choice. So price would be in the price array at choice index. All right, so the same thing that we have done before. And one last step would be, okay, and then there is only one last step, that would be that we need to continue to the next customer. Okay, so we are incrementing the customer count by 1, and at the end, if it becomes greater than 100, then we stop, or if status becomes equal to exit, and here we'll just ask the user to input the value status, and we'll say enter exit or input exit to quit the program, otherwise continue. So then you take input into status, and if they input exit, so the loop will end. Otherwise, if they input something else, the loop will repeat, and then the same thing will happen for the second quotation, then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth, sixth, so on and so forth. I think I made a small mistake here. Total price, output name choice, and calculated price. Okay, so this should be total price, because this is the price that we have calculated for the wood for the whole room, and choice of the wood is fine. And here it should be, we are saving the input price, calculate the price, store all the data. So in the fifth index, there's a price of the wood required in 2 decimal places. Okay, this is fine. Only this was different. We were printing the individual price of the wood type. Instead, we had to output the price of the overall room in which the wood is used. And with this, the question is done. Thank you.